Having trouble believing in God, have some obstacles between you and faith in God, or maybe not you, maybe a relative or a friend or somebody you'd just like to help out. What are those obstacles, and can we overcome those obstacles? That's what we're going to do this hour, talk about overcoming obstacles to belief in God, of which we can assume there must be many because lots of people seem to be having trouble believing in God. Maybe coming to the conclusion that there is no God, or just maybe coming to the conclusion, I don't know and I can't know. 888-318-7884 is our number. If you are that person, we would love to have a chat with you. 888-318-7884. Or if you know that person and you'd like to be helpful in addressing their concerns or helping them overcome their obstacles, again, 888-318-7884. And here to help us do that is Carlo Broussard, the author of Prepare the Way, Overcoming Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. Carlo is apologist here at Catholic Answers, speaker extraordinaire. It's very nice to have you back again, Carlo. How are you?
Hey, Cy, it's great to be back, and I'm doing all right, brother.
And I didn't forget to say your name this time.
That's right.
Forget to say your name, just start having a conversation with you.
You introduced me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know I'm getting better, Carlo. I have certain obstacles to doing my job correctly. One of them is that I do get genuinely excited when you're here because I really am deeply of the notion that faith and reason are compatible in the way that maybe twin siblings are compatible. That there's just no conflict at all between faith and reason, but they can be helpful to one another. And you are one of those people who you vindicate that faith. You know, like you actually have the chops to explain those
Well,
things.
I'm working on it. I don't know if I have it completely, but I'm working on it, definitely. I tell you what, these guys here at Catholic Answers, they always whooping me around, man, trying to set me straight, you know.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, faith can be vindicated by reason, because by employing reason, we can show the reasonable grounds for making an act of faith in God's divine revelation of himself. But when it comes to belief in God as a proposition to affirm or deny, right? That is something that we can affirm by virtue of faith, and the majority of people acknowledge God's existence based on faith. That's a rational approach to belief in God.
Yeah.
But the proposition that God exists is not what we would call an article of faith. It can be known and accepted by faith, but it's not an article of faith, as is something like the Trinity or the hypostatic union, Jesus, two natures joined in one divine person, the incarnation, that the Son of God, the second person of the Blessed Trinity, became man, the miraculous conception of our blessed Lord in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary. These are things that go beyond reason, and thus cannot be arrived at by reason alone. It must be told to us by God. But that God exists is something that can be known by the natural light of human reason. There are a variety of arguments to support that claim, whether it be probable arguments, such as, like, for example, the fine-tuning argument, which looks at, certain the fine-tuning of the initial conditions of the universe and the universal constants, and then reasoning or inferring to the high probability of there being a supercalculating intellect, right? That set all of those conditions. But then there are also, in my opinion, metaphysical demonstrative proofs, the premises of which can be reduced to first principles of knowledge, such as the principle of non-contradiction, the principle of sufficient reason, and or principle of causality, etc. So that God exists is something that can be known by the natural light of human reason. The First Vatican Council defined this in the 19th century. I think I'm getting that right. The First Vatican, I'll make sure. The First Vatican Council defined that.
1869.
There you go. Thank you. I want to make sure I didn't slip up like I did on the cruise, right? Remember when I messed up on some dates?
That is so funny. Weeks ago, you're probably still ruminating over that.
Indeed.
Okay, all right.
It keeps me up at night, man. But so something that God exists can be known by the natural light of human reason, but as St. Thomas Aquinas would point out in the Summa Theologiae, this is only known by a few who have the skills and the capabilities to go through the intellectual rigor, the rigor of the intellectual arguments. Only a few have the leisure time to do so. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
And then, of course, many who try to do so end up in a variety of erroneous ideas and erroneous conclusions. So this is why God, in His mercy, revealed to us through supernatural revelation this natural truth that we can know by the natural light of human reason, but God reveals it to us to allow us to come to this knowledge with ease and with more certainty.
So it's okay for me as a Christian, and I really would say this. This is a true statement, I think, about myself. I believe you when you say you can come to know that God exists by the light of reason, but that's not how I did it. That's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. But that it is attainable by the natural light of human reason is a prerequisite for it's something, divine revelation itself is logically presupposed by the existence of God and that He exists. We call this a preamble of faith. Before when we're talking about reality itself, before God can reveal Himself, He must first exist, right? And this is something that can be known by the natural light of human reason. It's not necessary that God tell us so through a supernatural means.
Again, 888-318-7884, the number. We're talking about overcoming obstacles to belief in God. The lines are filling up, so you might want to dial if you want to get in and chat with Carlo. And it's okay to be challenging if you think you have a proof that there's no God or something like that. You're welcome as well. Atheists, agnostics, religious people, non-religious people, Catholics, non-Catholics, everybody's welcome. 888-318-7884. Let's go to Tim in Monclova, Ohio, listening to EWTN on 89.7 FM. Tim, your question for Carlo Broussard.
Yeah, hi, guys.
Hey,
hi, Tim.
I just wanted to ask, my obstacle right now is I'm having trouble ciphering the difference between, dissolution and faith. I know, Mother Teresa, she went through a period of time with dissolution, but, for me, with me not having that close relationship or feeling God and knowing Him, isn't that faith? Not knowing is faith, but having that experience, I kind of having trouble, I want that experience, but I feel like I don't have that, so that's called faith.
Okay, so if I could let me just clarify with you, Tim. You want to believe in God, or maybe you do believe in God, but it's difficult because you don't have any felt experience of Him. You're not feeling His presence in any way.
I am Catholic. I do believe in God.
Right.
I don't have that really felt experience. I'm
Fair
trying.
enough.
I've been going to retreats and things of that nature.
Well, God bless you, Tim.
Yeah.
Carlo, what do you say to that?
And this is relevant to the topic at hand, Cy, because for many, unlike Tim, there are many who, because they don't feel God's presence in their lives, they don't have any sort of spiritual sensory experience or even psychological or emotional experience, so they conclude from that, well, then God must not be real. And that can serve to be an obstacle to even belief in God, unlike it is for Tim, but for many others out there it is the case. But I think we can address both in the same way. And so, Tim, I would say having faith, you can have faith whether you experience emotional satisfaction in belief in God or not. So you mentioned in your comment that, well, because I don't have an emotional experience, well, then therefore it is faith. Well, faith can be had whether the emotional experience is there or not, precisely because faith is an act of assenting to that which God has revealed to us and assenting to it and embracing it as true, acknowledging it to be true because God has revealed it. We accept that which God has revealed based upon His testimony, and that testimony is the most reliable testimony of all because God is He who can neither deceive nor be deceived. So that faith is a response to the evidence given to us through the teaching the teaching of Jesus Christ and His resurrection. And so we make an act of faith. We accept what God has revealed to us based upon His testimony in and through Jesus Christ. Now, that can be accompanied by an emotional experience, or sometimes it won't be accompanied by emotional experience. And this is why we can never use emotional experience as a guiding principle in order to determine or decipher whether I have legitimate faith or not, because faith can be had with or without it. And this I will admit, Tim, that this belongs to God's providential plan and his infinite wisdom, and it is a mystery of how God will give some that emotional experience, and sometimes people don't receive that emotional experience. God is a temporary thing. God gives it at sometimes he takes it away. And I think there is wisdom in that, because at times God wills to test our faith to see if we're willing to continue believing in him and embracing what he has revealed to us based upon his testimony, whether we have the emotional experience or not. Are we in love with the experience, which would seem to be a selfish thing? Or are we in love with him? And so is it about God or is it about me? So I think this is why sometimes God, in his infinite wisdom, will take away that emotional experience in order to test our faith. And we see this throughout Scripture, God testing Abraham and testing saints throughout the history of the church. So what do you think of that, Tim?
I just wanted to expand. I totally agree with you, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trucking along. I'm not losing faith due to not having that experience, but maybe to possibly have that if he does have it in his will for me. I mean, do you think just doing the groundwork and continuing to have faith and prayer, if he has it in his will, then that'll come about? I guess that's how I look at it, right?
Sure. Yes, Tim. I think we can say that in God's plan and his infinite wisdom, when the timing is right, God will bless us with certain experiences of him in the sensory realm and the emotional realm, but it's something that we can't expect to be experiencing ongoing day in and day out. I mean, even on the natural level, right? In a marriage, in the home, and when you're with your spouse.
I love my wife completely and ardently at all times.
But there's a difference between love and the experience and the feeling that sort of comes from love. That's right. So sometimes you have the fuzzy-wuzzy feelings that flow from love, and sometimes you don't, and you're still loving. So I think, Tim, it is reasonable to say that in this relationship with God, we keep trucking forward and exercising the act of faith and believing in him and trusting and having confidence that at some time when God sees it fit, that he'll bless us with temporary goods, such as the emotional and sensory experience of his presence.
But if you're asking in a trusting way, it's okay to ask him for.
Oh, sure. That's a very good point. I actually thought about that as Tim was talking, and I wanted to say that there's nothing wrong with requesting that from God.
Yeah.
As long as you're requesting it in accordance with his will. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, God, it would be nice to get a little affirmation here, man.
Yeah.
It's
right.
pretty dark right now, and I'm praying for a little light.
Right.
And so I'm asking for your help here, but in accordance with your will. So if he chooses not to give us that sensory pleasurable experience, right, of his presence and feeling that consolation, then we trust it's his will and we keep moving forward in faith.
Tim, we will have to leave it there. I hope that was helpful to you. Thanks so much for starting us off with your call today. Our topic this hour: overcoming obstacles to belief in God, whether you have that obstacle in your own life or whether there's someone in your life who you would like to help over such an obstacle. Give us a call, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Our spring store-wide sale is still on. We've got all kinds of resources, including the new books from Don Eden, Jimmy Akin, Trent Horn, and a whole bunch more. Just enter the promo code SPRING. Oh, that'll include Carlo's book, Prepare the Way, Overcoming Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. You get 15% off all of it. Just put in the promo code SPRING19 when you visit shop.catholic.com. SPRING19 at shop.catholic.com for 15% off everything.
We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
We need EWTN Radio for the reason that Mother Angelica founded this entire enterprise. She always saw this as a spiritual growth network. It was to be an enterprise in media that reached people in all aspects of their life. She saw this as a holistic approach to reaching the whole person in the middle of the world and bringing them truth and life.
Raymond Arroyo thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Second hour, Rose Sweet will be here. We're going to talk about marriage, annulments, divorce, the church's teaching on all of those. And if that touches on your life and you'd like to ask a question, give us a call. Second hour. This hour, overcoming obstacles to belief in God. Carlo Broussard is our guest, and our next caller is Hunter in Virginia, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Hunter, thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Carlo.
Hi, Carlo. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a convert to Catholicism, so okay. I've been learning, trying to do my best to learn as much as I could. I grew up in a secular household. Atheists, etc.
Okay.
Wow.
The doctrine that I seem to be struggling the most with of late is the doctrine of original sin and the fall.
Okay.
Specifically, how it relates to evolution. And you know, I'm no expert in paleoanthropology, evolution of the human species, but you know, a survey of modern scholarship seems to suggest that the prevailing theories that the first humans came about somewhere in Central Africa, maybe a couple 100,000 years ago or so.
Right.
And that given the gradual nature of evolutionary processes, a lot of paleoanthropologists posit that it's unlikely that the current human population could trace its lineage all the way back to a single pair of humans, like an Adam and Eve,
right,
but rather to a group of early humans.
Sure.
Which, if true, would seem that we're not all physical genetic descendants of Adam and Eve.
Sure.
And so I wanted to know if such a theory would be in conflict with the doctrine of original sin, because from how I read it, it seems entirely consistent with the teaching of the Church to say that we, and by we I mean like the current population of humans, don't have to be the physical and genetic descendants of Adam and Eve, but rather that every human soul instantiated after Adam's primordial sin inherited its fallen nature consequentially. So ultimately the question is that plausible, or does it have to be the case that we're all physical genetic descendants of Adam and Eve?
Yeah, I would land in the camp on the latter, that the Church does teach that original sin has been transmitted to us, or the stain of original sin has been transmitted to us through the propagation of the human species from Adam and Eve. This is why the Church teaches that all of humanity it incurs the stain of original sin, because all of humanity was in Adam when he disobeyed God. This is why death comes into human history through the sin of the one man, Adam, as St. Paul writes about in Romans chapter 5, and consequently through the new one man, the new Adam, Christ, grace is now made manifest to all of humanity. Now, concerning how does that jibe with modern science and the genetic information that we have within us, and it not being able to come from only two people, there are a multiplicity of theories that scholars, both theologians and philosophers, posit in order to show how the church's teaching on the transmission of original sin, of a fallen human nature coming from our first parents, Adam and Eve, and how that coheres with the modern scientific evidence within the field of genetics. And so I would encourage you to check out 2 online articles. Now, those theories go beyond what we can talk about here on the air, and because it's very nuanced, I'm hesitant to even go forward with the explanations because it can cause a lot of confusion, and I don't have time in order to clarify the nuances. But there are 2 online articles, Hunter, written by Catholic philosopher Edward Feser, F-E-S-E-R. And the 2, it's Modern Biology and Original Sin, parts 1 and 2. So if you just Google Modern Biology and Original Sin, it'll come up part 1 and part 2. And you can read those articles, Hunter. And Dr. Feser actually references some other articles on a scholarly level that you can check out as well. Now, as you read these articles, keep in mind, Hunter, that these are simply theories, right, that are proposed for reconciling the divinely revealed truth of original sin and the transmission of original sin through the propagation of the human species and what modern science has given us. So it's not that you have to accept the theory that's being proposed in order to reconcile the 2, but it's one theory that could be proposed in order to show how they both cohere. So in no way would we have to deny what God reveals to us concerning original sin coming from Adam and Eve through the propagation of the human species, through the human race, and what modern science gives us. In no way would we have to reject one or the other, but they both can cohere. So I'll leave it at that, Hunter, and I'll leave it up to you. You sound like a very bright individual, man, so God bless you for that, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the couple of articles and the further articles that Dr. Feser references.
Thanks, Hunter. Thanks very much. As Dr. Stacy Trasenkos, scientist and theologian, always reminds us, you got to be careful about overclaiming what science can reveal too. I mean,
that's right.
It's not just not the current state of science. It's not possible ever for science to tell us who our first parents were.
Correct.
That can never be done.
Yeah, what science is doing is it's restricted on the level of genetics, right, and what is empirically available to us, but it doesn't consider the higher or deeper metaphysical questions about the nature of the human being and how God interacts with the propagation of the human species, and how every human soul is directly created by God but cooperating with human beings and other possible non-rational animals that possibly rational animals may have been interbreeding with in order to account for the genetic makeup that we find today.
Right.
I just gave a little hint
of what
a peek of one of the possible theories that are proposed. But the point being is that science is restricted on the first level of the building, of looking at only what its methods of science allow it to look at.
Right.
And then, of course, you have further higher up in the building metaphysical questions that science just simply can't address.
One of the great things, though, about all that science is, man, you get a sense of the great, awesome power of God.
That's right.
The way the more you learn about the way God does things, the more you're like, oh, man, I am a tiny speck.
And then you have to bring in theology here, because when you start reading about some of these proposed theories of how to account for all the diversity of the genetic makeup, you also have to take into theology in what was God's plan before the fall.
Yeah.
And how God may possibly have done it if Adam and Eve had not sinned.
Yeah.
And taken into account the condition of the human race after the fall, and what's going on there, and how God might work with certain things, but given the fallen world, right?
Yeah, right.
So you also have to take into account theology and what God has revealed to us.
Hunter, again, thank you for that question. Overcoming obstacles to God this hour with Carlo Broussard, and we go now to Jeff in St. Louis, Missouri, listening on KHOJ. Jeff, your question for Carlo.
Hello. I've had some discussions with my oldest son who, he's still a believer and everything, but he doesn't think that there's any real rational proof that there is a God or that there had to be a God that created everything and put it in motion, that type of thing.
Sure.
I don't know, he's talking about multiverses and, that like the laws of thermodynamics would apply to a closed system, so that wouldn't necessarily mean, that the universe would have at some point reached equilibrium where all the heat, transferred and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So I didn't know if you had any, and he was saying, I guess, for mass and energy are interchangeable, I guess, to an extent. And
okay.
And they're never lost, so I guess the perpetual motion machine kind of argument wouldn't work and that kind of thing. So
okay.
I don't know if you had any, either if you could, explain it or had links or.
Okay, fair enough. Jeff, I think the perpetual motion machine argument actually does work, but I'm in the minority on that. But.
Yeah, so Jeff, no, this is a great question. So it seems to me that your son is coming at you in conversation with things he's reading or arguments for God's existence that only employ the evidence from modern science, which is... Oh, there's the break. There's the music for the break. So, Jeff, please stay on the line, and hopefully we'll wrap up. I'll be able to answer the question on the other side of the break. Si?
I hope you're not cheating, Carlo. I hope you're just not using the break to go.
It gives me some time to look
figure out science. You've got 2.5 minutes to figure out science, Carlo. Then we'll be back. Jeff, if you can hang on, that would be just great. We're talking about overcoming obstacles to belief in God today on Catholic Answers Live.
Have a question? We've got answers.
Catholic Answers
Live.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old children or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture decays, we have to know how to talk to our children about these issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need appropriate to their age and maturity level to meet the world's challenges. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging onto the shop at Catholic.com.
Hi, this is Phillip Rivers, NFL quarterback, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Love and beauty. As a little girl, Dawn Eden Goldstein knew that she wanted those things, that in them somehow she would find God. Over the years as a rock journalist, she moved among some of popular music's best-known artists, straining to capture that transcendent love and beauty in every note and lyric. In Sunday Will Never Be the Same, Dawn recounts her spiritual journey in beautifully wrought detail, mixing powerful accounts of trauma, healing, and epiphany with funny anecdotes from inside the music scene. It is the rare conversion story that delights as it inspires, amuses as it edifies, and ultimately lays before the reader a lived testimony to the transforming grace of Christ. Order your copy of Sunday Will Never Be the Same by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Rose Sweet here in the studio with us now. All the fun can begin. Next hour she'll be here in front of the microphone to talk about annulments, divorce, and in the context of the Catholic teaching on marriage. So hang on if you've got questions or difficulties in that area. That is the hour for you. This hour, Carlo Broussard is here, and we're talking about overcoming obstacles to belief in God, which is also covered in his book, Prepare the Way, Overcoming Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. Carlo, when we were interrupted by the commercials, we were talking with Jeff in St. Louis about his son's scientifically based objections to God. Like,
yeah.
Go ahead. So I'll let you.
So Jeff, are you still there, brother?
Yes, I am.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so as I was saying before the break, it sounds like your son has been reading about arguments that employ evidence from modern science to promote the theistic worldview and the conclusion that God exists. And that's a rational approach. And there are some very persuasive arguments concerning those types of arguments that employ science. I would recommend two resources for you. Okay, so one is by Father Robert Spitzer, the founder of the Magis Center. So if you go to magiscenter.com, M-A-G-I-S center.com, and check out his book, New Proofs for the Existence of God. New Proofs for the Existence of God. And in that book, the first half of the book concerns a few arguments, such as the fine-tuning argument and the Kalam cosmological argument, that employ evidence from contemporary cosmology to support the theistic worldview. And he answers a variety of objections that atheists and agnostics will pose to those arguments from science. Also, my colleague and friend here at Catholic Answers, Trent Horn's book, Answering Atheism, deals with a variety of these arguments that employ evidence from science as well. Now, it's interesting that he would bring to the table only these sorts of arguments and not bring to the table an awareness of other types of arguments, which I mentioned at the outset of the broadcast here. Arguments that would be metaphysical demonstrations that God exists, the premises of which in that argument can be reduced to first principles of knowledge. So if you deny the conclusion, you ultimately have to deny the first principles of knowledge that the premises rest on. So the types of arguments such as these, Jeff, would be arguments such as Aquinas' 5 ways, articulated in summary form in the Summa Theologiae. So here's what I'm going to do for you, Jeff. I'll recommend to you a few resources that you can get a hold of that deal with these these types of arguments. So, for example, my book, Prepare the Way, Overcoming Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church, I have a chapter in there where I give a proof very similar to St. Thomas Aquinas' proof in his work on being and essence. And it basically starts with the very existence of things, showing that things of our experience do not exist by nature. They don't have the active existence by their very essence. They must receive it from something outside themselves, and thus reasoning to an uncaused cause of existence, a reality or a cause that is existence itself, namely God himself, God. And then I argue that there can only be one and deduce the various attributes. So that would be my book, Prepare the Way. Now, I would also recommend, Jeff, a book written by a good friend of mine, former employee here at Catholic Answers, Matt Fradd, and then the co-author, Robert Delfino. And the title of their book is Does God Exist? A Socratic Dialogue on the 5 Ways of Thomas Aquinas. And so you have sort of a popularized Socratic fun way of approaching the 5 ways, and then Dr. Delfino gives a more scholarly, articulate exposition of the 5 ways of St. Thomas Aquinas. And then finally, Jeff, I would mention the book by the philosopher that I mentioned previously, Dr. Edward Feser, his book, 5 Proofs of the Existence of God, where he goes through 5 metaphysical or philosophical demonstrations and showing that, the argument is valid in form, the premises can be reduced to first principles of knowledge, and so if you deny the conclusion, you're going to end up having to deny first principles of knowledge, which cannot be denied, because in order to deny them, you have to use them, and so you have truly scientific knowledge in the Aristotelian and Thomistic sense. So, Jeff, those are some resources that I would recommend. Yes, it does require some work on your part, and it's going to require rolling up the sleeves and getting dirty and digging in deep, but I promise you, Jeff, it will be entirely worth it, because it is quite a delight when you contemplate reality and see the beautiful interlocking of all of these concepts and ideas, and how this whole metaphysical or philosophical framework that reality is, right? And seeing how that points or demonstrates God's existence. it's an intellectual delight. There's much satisfaction, not only for you, Jeff, but if you can articulate it in ways that is persuasive for your son, hopefully your son will come to see that beauty as well.
And Jeff, or anybody else who would like to get those books, Nick wrote them all down, and he'll put them in the show notes. So there's always show notes that go with these shows. Just go to Catholic.com, find this show, and there will be the notes. And I'm looking at the work that Nick did, and he spelled everything right. Beautiful work, Nick. I hope that was helpful to you. Let us go now to John. And I don't have a location for John, but I'm happy he's here. John, your question for Carlo Broussard.
Yes, good evening. I could barely hear the radio because I'm in the car, but I think my question is similar to an earlier caller's. I have a problem with the anthropological history. There are so many hominid species close to Homo sapiens, like Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon, and we even have some Homo sapiens have Neanderthal genes in them.
Right.
So at what point, my question is did the soul get entered? Because there's evidence that some of these had spirituality, the way they were buried with flowers or pollens and things like that. So at what point was the soul entered? And, that kind of conflicts with me for things. And if you're talking about Genesis, if death entered the world through sin, why did things die before Adam and Eve?
These, John, I'm just going to, because we got two questions now. They're both really, really good questions. Maybe we'll start with the second one, Carlo, because I think it's the easier to dispose of. Death entered the world through sin. That doesn't necessarily mean death in the animal kingdom or the plant kingdom.
That is correct. John, so you might be interested to know that the Catholic Church, especially in its catechism, I can't remember the exact citation, but in its section on evil, it teaches that even before the fall, things were coming into existence and going out of existence. There was generation and there was corruption, given the fact that God willed to create a material world in what the Catechism calls a state of journeying to its perfection. And the Church teaches that death entered into human history given the fall, or as a consequence of the fall of Adam and Eve. So the Church does not teach that there was no death prior to the fall within the animal kingdom, within the vegetable kingdom, right, within plants. I mean, animals were munching on plants, and plants are living organisms, so plants were dying. And that fits within the order of the whole and the good of the whole in God's providential plan and how he wills to create a material world. Now, concerning your first question about Neanderthals and Adam and Eve, etc. Once again, I would point you to those articles, online articles, Modern Biology and Original Sin by Dr. Edward Feser, and you can see how he articulates at least one theory among many that's put forward in order to show how the Church's teaching on original sin and its transmission coheres with the modern scientific narrative. And then just keep in mind, too, John, that in no way, or let me just say this, that the alleged problem between the modern narrative, the narrative that modern science gives us, and the creation story in the book of Genesis only arises if you hold to a literalistic interpretation of the creation story in Genesis, such as the literal 6 24-hour period and the succession of days for creation. And so what the Church teaches us is that there are certain primeval truths, historical truths, that the author of Genesis is affirming, but he does so through metaphorical language or figures of speech. Even in its recounting of the fall, there are certain figures of speech and metaphors being used. So we have to be very careful not to read the creation story in Genesis and the fall with the lens of a 21st century every modern American who is scientifically inclined, right? Because the author of Genesis was not telling us, how the heavens go. The author of Genesis was not giving us a scientific treatise about how God created the universe and whatnot, but he is giving us theology. He is giving us why God created and how to get to heaven in this relationship that we as humans are supposed to have with God, etc. So those are a few thoughts. What do you think of that, John?
Well, I understand that, and I don't take it literally, and I think God could create any way He wants. I don't have a problem with evolution or with anything else. The thing is that, again, where was the soul?
Oh, okay.
When
Yeah, that's right.
Into history.
That's right. That point slipped my memory. I apologize, John. Well, we don't know exactly at which point in history do we have the first man, the metaphysical man. That is the first animal that becomes a rational animal. That is a body rational spiritual soul composite. That is an animal that no longer has just sensory knowledge, but an animal that has conceptual knowledge. That's what we define a human being as, is a rational animal. We don't have knowledge of exactly when that took place, but we do know philosophically by the natural light of human reason, as St. Thomas Aquinas argues, I think it's in Book 2 of his Summa Contra Gentiles, that the spiritual rational soul of human beings can only come into existence by a being who has infinite power, namely God. So whenever the first human being, when we're talking metaphysically here, philosophically, right? Not just biologically, but metaphysically, the first human being, we know that rational spiritual soul was created directly by God.
John, thank you very, very much for that. We are talking about overcoming obstacles to belief in God today with Carlo Broussard, and more of your calls right after. I want to let you know, though, that Dawn Eden Goldstein's new book that she wrote for Catholic Answers is out. And if you want a book that is both kind of just a great story, very emotionally satisfying, and also deeply spiritually satisfying, you'll love Dawn's book. It's the story of her conversion to the Catholic faith. Sunday Will Never Be the Same is the name of the book. Dawn recounts her spiritual journey in all kinds of... she's just a great writer. I don't know how else to say it. And she was, she's a great writer in part because she made her living in the secular world as a writer, writing about rock musicians and rock producers. She was a rock music industry journalist, and now she puts pen to paper in praise of Jesus Christ and his church. Sunday Will Never Be the Same. You just go to Catholic.com, click on the Sunday Will Never Be the Same banner, and you can learn how you might be able to get a copy for free. Sunday Will Never Be the Same. Visit that banner at Catholic.com.
Hi, this is Trevor Williams from the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Have you ever been so grief-stricken and so heart-sick that you can't see God? You can't see God in the tragedy. You can't see God in that cross. You can't see God in that situation. Why? You're enveloped in that grief. You're enveloped in fear. And God is out the window. You don't see him standing right next to you.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their Catholic values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Pope Francis reminds us that it does not take a specialized degree in theology to become a great evangelist. We're all called to evangelize. Think about the woman at the well. After she encountered Jesus, she immediately went into the city and invited others to meet him as she had. You and I can go out now and do the same. And St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. Get involved today by contacting us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Carlo Broussard is our guest this hour. Next hour, Rose Sweet will be in here. This hour, we're talking about overcoming obstacles to belief in God. And we go now to River in Traverse City, Michigan, watching on YouTube Live. Thanks for joining us on YouTube, River. Your question for Carlo.
Yes, I recently read an article by Jimmy Akin. Well, first of all, I'll just give this background. I'm not sure if you're familiar with simulation theory, but simulation theory is basically the theory that humans, as our reality is basically a computer simulation of a reality.
Right.
It
Matrix.
sounds like science fiction. Yeah, Matrix, basically.
But Nick Bostrom, you're talking about the British philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed this idea. Yeah.
Yep, and Jimmy Akin wrote an article about it saying that it doesn't matter whether or not we're in a simulation, Catholicism is still true.
Jimmy would write that, and I bet he backed it up too. Yeah. But I keep interrupting you. I apologize. But your question for Carlo?
Totally fine. Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's any other. Jimmy Akin's the only one I can find who has any kind of Catholic insight into this, and I'm so sorry about this question if it's irrelevant. But we were talking about overcoming obstacles to belief in God, and it sounds so stupid, but this is my obstacle to overcoming belief in God right now.
Okay.
Is the simulation theory, and
it doesn't sound stupid at all, River, and I think that Carlo can help you out. Hang on.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. So first of all, I can't comment on Jimmy's article because I haven't read it yet. So I'm going to have to put that off to the side right now. But Jimmy's a brilliant man, and whatever he says in the article, I would love to read it, and I'll probably steal it from him and answer it with his answers the next time I get the question. But River, no, it is a legitimate question precisely for this reason, Cy. And that is to say, following Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas said, everything that's in the mind comes first from the senses. So we start our intellectual enterprise with what we perceive and sense in reality. And from there, we engage in the intellectual processes of abstraction, like abstracting, the form of dogness from Fido the dog. And then we begin reasoning. Well, Fido the dog is a material thing, and material things corrupt and decay, so Fido's going to corrupt and decay type of thing. That's reasoning. That's a third act of the mind. So, River brings up a very important point here, namely, well, if I'm cut off from the external world and I can't really trust what I'm taking in from the external world, well, then how am I even going to begin reasoning to God's existence? And River, this sort of line of thinking finds its roots in the 17th century French philosopher René Descartes, who proposed the hypothetical idea of the possibility of a malignant being deceiving us, right? And therefore not being able to trust our senses. So I address this in my book, River, Prepare the Way, Overcoming Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church, in a particular chapter. And one of the strategies that I coach you through is I give you 3 ways in which you can overcome this obstacle yourself and possibly help others to overcome the obstacle. So first of all, I articulate how just because something is not logically impossible, that is to say it's logically possible, it doesn't follow that it's plausible, right? So, I would ask you and I ask others, well, what good reasons do you have to think that everything we experience is just a simulation? Right? So just because something might be logically possible, it doesn't mean it's plausible. And so if it's highly implausible, well, then you have good reason to trust what your senses are giving you concerning the external data that you're taking in your lived experience as a human being. The second way that I articulate in how to overcome this obstacle is that, and I don't have time to get into the details here, River, but the only possible way, right, to settle the question is to use the very faculties that are being called into question. So in order to deny that my faculties and the use of my faculties, both intellectually on the spiritual level, such as judgment and reasoning, etc., as well as my sensory faculties, right, which I use for cognition and for knowledge. In order to deny these faculties, you have to actually use them in order to deny them, because you're going to have to think about past experiences, which uses imagination and your sensory faculties. You're actually having to use your intellect in order to try and deny the reality of your intellect. And one of the things that we learn in philosophy, River, is that something is true and valid if the only way to deny it, you have to use it, right? Sort of like the principle of non-contradiction and other first principles. So that's the second way I articulate. And then finally, I think it's this sort of objection, River, is self-refuting precisely because of this. Watch this. If it's possible that we're being deceived right now and everything is a simulation, well, then wouldn't it also be true that any evidence we have for this claim could be just another deception? So the very claim itself that we're being deceived, well, if that's possible, well, then any evidence you have to substantiate that claim could be a deception as well. And so it undermines all forms of rational discourse whatsoever. So those are a few thoughts that you can read about in more details, River, in my book, Prepare the Way.
River, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, basically, I had always assumed for a long time that the simulation theory just was not compatible with Catholic doctrine, and that it was not true that we live in a simulation, and that Catholicism was true. Now, reading Jimmy's article, that's coming into question, and basically where I stand is I live in a reality. I see the Bible, and I see that the Bible is historically accurate according to sources. And if the Bible is historically accurate, well, then we can trust the miracles that are in the Bible.
Sure.
And if we can trust the miracles in the Bible, we can trust that God exists based on those miracles in the Bible.
Yep.
My problem is when you introduce the possibility that I can't trust my senses or that the world is a simulation, I have to know that those miracles are not caused by the simulation or any deception.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, River, that you're right on target. Once again, I can't comment on Jimmy's article. I don't know what he wrote, but here's one thing to think about. I don't know if Jimmy is saying this or not, but here's a thought that comes to me, River. Even if the simulation theory is true, let's just say hypothetically that everything we experience is a matrix, is a simulation, it doesn't follow from that God does not exist. And to state it differently, it's possible that God is an objective reality, that God does exist, and we're in a simulation, and everything's a matrix. So it does, I see it as cutting us off from arriving at knowledge that God exists. But the simulation theory in no way proves that God does not exist on a metaphysical, ontological, just highfalutin fancy terminology for reality, right? So we have to distinguish between an epistemological claim, which is the study of how we come to know things, versus a metaphysical claim, which is a claim about the way things really are.
If I may, doesn't some of the proofs for the existence of a rational immortal soul suggest that and our understanding that a rational immortal soul can only be created directly by a supreme creator? Doesn't that argue against us being in a simulation? Because
if you sort of take Descartes' methodological doubt approach and saying, well, I know for sure the one thing that exists is me, right? Because in order to deny my existence, I have to first exist, right? Type of thing. So he sort of had this groundwork, I exist, and then he offered ways in which to reason to God. But I see your point. That
my point is that your intellect could not be the product of a simulation, because your intellect can only be the product of an immortal soul directly created by God.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
I see what you're saying. So if you start with the reality that the intellect exists, that I am that I have a spiritual soul that is able to engage in immaterial operations, then I can reason from that God exists. And in fact, this is one of the arguments, this is a argument that we find within even the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas. And many philosophers have articulated in sort of a sixth way of starting with the imperfect knowledge that we have as human beings and reasoning from that to a cause of our spiritual soul who is perfect in knowledge and who is existence itself, etc. So I see your point that, trying to avoid this sort of cutoff from the sensory apparatus in order to start with the intellect itself. I would have to give it a little bit more thought, but that seems to be a possible way you could sketch a way out of that.
River, I hope something in there was helpful. Lots of people have denied the existence of my intellect, but that's a different subject for a different day.
I know the feeling, brother.
No, that has never happened in your case. Carlo Broussard, the author of Prepare the Way, Overcoming Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. Thanks so much for a very, very fine hour.
Well, thank you, Si. It was a great joy, man. I enjoyed it too.
All right, Rose Sweet coming up next to talk about marriage, annulment, and divorce. And to help you if you've got any questions or problems in that area. Hang on. We'll be right back with Rose Sweet on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Love and beauty. As a little girl, Dawn Eden Goldstein knew that she wanted those things, that in them somehow she would find God. Over the years as a rock journalist, she moved among some of popular music's best-known artists, straining to capture that transcendent love and beauty in every note and lyric. In Sunday Will Never Be the Same, Dawn recounts her spiritual journey in beautifully wrought detail, mixing powerful accounts of trauma, healing, and epiphany with funny anecdotes from inside the music scene. It is the rare conversion story that delights as it inspires, amuses as it edifies, and ultimately lays before the reader a lived testimony to the transforming grace of Christ. Order your copy of Sunday Will Never Be the Same by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Is the Church wrong on contraception? In a culture that worships the pursuit of sexual pleasure, the Catholic Church's teaching on contraception can seem archaic and unintelligible. Its critics say it's outdated, theologically unfounded, and even harmful. And even faithful Catholics can have difficulty explaining this moral teaching. Catholic Answers is out to change all of that. That's why we've just released Trent Horn's dynamic new DVD, The Case Against Contraception. Using scripture, papal and magisterial teachings, natural law, and new insights provided by social science and medicine, Trent puts forward a compelling case for Catholic teachings with his trademark charity and persuasive graciousness. Be prepared to give a defense. Order your copy of The Case Against Contraception today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture's moral center continues to fly apart, and with every form of deviance publicly aired and celebrated, we have no choice but to equip our kids to understand about such issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level, to meet the world's challenges. Silence can no longer be an option. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging on to the shop at Catholic.com.
With the recent commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the release of Humanae Vitae, there have been fresh attacks on Catholic teaching from outside and, unfortunately, inside the Church. That's why Catholic Answers thought it critical to provide a vigorous affirmation of Paul VI's prophetic wisdom with our newest book, Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humanae Vitae. We asked 5 distinguished contributors to reflect on and defend Humanae Vitae from 5 perspectives, each of them compelling, together forming a mosaic of truth. Don't be caught uninformed when the topic of contraception comes up among friends, family, and co-workers. Order your copy of Inseparable today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or visiting the shop at Catholic.com.
Have you subscribed to the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter? This is Catholic Answers Live host Cy Kellett, and I want to tell you about our new weekly newsletter full of behind-the-scenes information and facts you need to know about the show. It's easy to sign up. Just visit CatholicAnswersLive.com and look for the newsletter sign-up box on the front of the page. It's a great way to keep up to date with what's happening with the show and see what's coming in the days ahead, delivered weekly into your inbox. Sign up today for the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter and see what you've been missing. Go to CatholicAnswersLive.com. It's not like this every day around here at Catholic Answers. All the bigwigs stopping by the studio, Chris Check, Todd Aguilaro, all the bosses come around. What is that? Who could have possibly been in the studio that they all wanted to visit with? It could be our guest, Rose Sweet.
No.
They don't do that for me, Rose.
No, they didn't do it for me.
I never see those people.
They didn't do it for me either. It was a coincidence.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it was. This hour we talk about marriage, annulments, divorce, remarriage, all those realities of the world. Not all ideals, but all certainly realities that we have to face. And our guest is Rose Sweet. And Rose is one of those people we trust around here on all those issues. She's been dealing with issues of separation, divorce, annulment, remarriage, blended families, and all that for a long time. Her books include Dear God, Send Me a Soulmate, Healing the Divorced Heart, Rebuilding After Divorce, How to Make Your House a Home Again, and most recently, and also the most recent book that I have read, The Catholic Woman's Guide to Happiness.
You are a man, and
Yes.
you read The Catholic Woman's Guide to Happiness.
I waited till my wife was not in the room, took it off of her nightstand, and decided I'd give it a go. Yeah. So.
And did you like it?
I did. I find I really like you in print.
Thank you. Thank you. I like to tell.
It's a nice contrast from my feelings about you in person.
No, don't go there. This is a Catholic show. Come on, you have to be nice to me.
Sorry, I'm only kidding, Rose. Yeah, it's nice. It's always nice when someone's personality actually comes out in their writing, like that. And you have lived a not straight path yourself in
Okay,
life.
let's call it what it is. I have lived a very sinful life in the past.
Really?
No, I'm not afraid to say it. I still regret.
Yeah.
But our Lord has been faithful to, woo me back to Himself.
That's the thing that I get in your writing is you would like other women, us men as well, but other women to find that joy that God gave you.
Yeah.
A joy that doesn't come from being perfect,
right,
but comes from being beloved.
Right. And trusting in Him.
Amen.
And being able to breathe because of it.
888-318-7884 is our number here if you have questions about divorce and remarriage and the Catholic teaching on marriage itself. 888-318-7884. Is it... you get the sense sometimes in the current commentary on marriage is, look, people don't know what they're doing when they're young. Like, give them a break. Is it that hard to understand first of all, the basics of marriage, but also what the church teaches about marriage. Is that hard to understand?
No, I love that you asked that because this is the nitty-gritty. People have been getting married young for centuries.
Yeah.
And youth in itself doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
You know, people can understand clearly this is till death, and you should be faithful to each other and love each other properly and be open to children. People can understand that. The problem is in our culture, in the last few decades especially, is that people have gone into marriage with that understanding, but also with the contrary beliefs that they don't have to have children ever, or that they have the option for divorce. That's a legitimate and reasonable belief that if I'm not happy, God wants me to be happy. And I'm going to give it my best shot in this marriage. But if I'm not happy, I have the right to exit. And the church needs to support that. That's a reality. It's wrong. It's wrong, wrong, wrong.
Well, there's a lot of churches with a cross on the front door you can walk into, and that is exactly what they will tell you.
Right. And so we do. So now today, and that's one of the reasons that we have way too many annulments in the Catholic Church. It's not because they're handed out like candy from the tribunals. It's because we have way too many people entering. And I was just talking about somebody at lunch today, too, Marie, in the other room there.
Assistant producer Marie?
Yeah. We were
Did she
talking
pay
about
for lunch?
No, we went Dutch.
She should
But no,
have
she was
paid.
talking about her young girlfriends, all they're in their 20s, and they're desperate. They want to get married before they're 30. They got to have a family, and they almost don't care who they marry. They're so needy, they can't see straight, and so they're making really bad judgments on entering marriage.
But even bad judgment, I mean, as long as there's no defect in your judgment, you can make a mistake, get married, and it's a permanent marriage. Or am I wrong?
No, that's right. Nobody has perfect judgment. Nobody knows what to expect.
No, someone married me.
No comment. Come on.
That's a sign of-
You be nice to me today.
Yeah.
I'll be nice to you.
Fair enough.
Okay.
But we can be mean to Missy, my wife. No, that's not really true. I'm only kidding. I'm sorry, Rose. You definitely bring out
No,
the
we need
worst.
Father Hugh to give you confession here, to hear your confession.
right.
Okay, let's get back, because this is important.
Yeah.
So no, we don't have perfect judgment, or we don't know, nobody knows exactly what they're doing, but the basics of marriage are easy to understand.
Yes.
And we can choose somebody that's like maybe a very difficult spouse. The church recognizes there are valid marriages that are very difficult.
Right.
But they're not invalid.
Yeah.
But what happens is when the marriage crashes and burns and somebody comes to the tribunal, one of the parties or both, and says, look, well, can you help us take a look at this? What happened? Did we even have a valid marriage bond to begin with?
Right.
Then that's where the church steps in and says, well, let's take a good, hard look at everything. That's what the annulment process is.
888-318-7884. Again, the number. However, the lines are filling up, so you will want to get in on that. Rose, because the lines are filling up, shall we just go to the phones?
Well,
Or did you want to do something else?
could we just talk about those little things that I sent you in the email?
Oh, yeah,
I think they're
apologize.
really important.
Yeah,
Do you
right.
even remember what they are?
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. I just forgot and started going to the phones, and now
Okay, let's go to the
you've,
phones.
Flummoxed me.
Let's go to the phones.
Let's go to the next of those points.
Okay.
Because I know I did one of them.
I know there's a lot of flack out there in social media and about divorced and remarried Catholics and receiving Holy Communion. This is a big, serious topic. But the church has laws about this, both in the Catechism and canon law. For us to remember, this is God. We are going to receive and have this intimate, spiritual, physical encounter with God Himself. And toward that end, we are to be properly disposed. And I love what Cardinal Raymond Burke said in 2007 when he talked about this topic. He said, some people are not to present themselves for Holy Communion to protect the dignity and the sanctity of the sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, to preserve and protect, safeguard the salvation of the soul of that person. Because they go, oh, I can do whatever I want. They could do that all the way to hell.
I can do whatever I want is never a good prescription for getting to heaven.
And number 3, Cardinal Burke says, is to safeguard the sanctity of the rest of the body of Christ, to help to avoid scandal.
Right.
So those 3 reasons are why non-Catholics shouldn't approach to receive Holy Communion.
Yeah.
Obstinate, publicly, gravely manifest public sinners are not to approach for Holy Communion. Here's one we all forget. If you broke your 1-hour fast, you are not to approach for Holy Communion. What? Does God loves me? He doesn't care. Right. Hang on. And even little sweet children, if they don't have the proper disposition and understanding of the Eucharist, they are also not to present themselves. And this is not to be exclusive, but it's to protect and safeguard something very, very, very precious. And I think people forget that.
Right. And it's okay. I feel like, I'll tell you who I think gets this more than a lot of us Anglo-Catholics, Mexican Catholics do. You go to Spanish Mass, there's a lot of people that don't go to communion. And you get a sense that, well, maybe because there's a little, now there could be bad reasons for it too. I don't know all the details, but you get a sense of everyone's not just like treating this like we all got to go now.
I love that, and I'm not going to confess my sin on the air, but there was a time when I would just march up for communion regardless because God loved me and I'm a good person, right? But then when I had this reversion to my faith and understood what was happening here, I remember one time I wasn't sure, but there could have been a possibility I was actually in mortal sin. And so I sat in that pew, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't go to communion. And everybody was like giving me weird looks and walking over me, and I was like, I don't want to go before our Lord. I know He loves me, but I can't go there right now. And I knew I had to get to confession first.
And all those looks that people give you, that's something that we do here in the United States that I don't think that it happens everywhere in the world. I mean, just it could well be that the person who is not going to communion is just simply not feeling that they are in the proper state of mind for communion, or they broke the fast accidentally and they're like, oh man, even if you go, oh, I didn't realize it's time to go to church, I was just eating. Well, the proper thing to do is just refrain from going to communion. A lot of people say, well, Jesus understands that I forgot. Yeah, that's true. Jesus understands that you forgot, but it's a very simple...
Right, it's not even about Jesus as much as it's about us learning to sacrifice just in the tiniest way as a response to the great sacrifice He did for us.
Right.
It's about His love for us.
All right, one more.
There's one more?
Point.
There is?
Wasn't there? Or did we get them all? We got them all? Okay.
I think that's good enough for now.
That's what I thought before. It's good enough for now. I don't know. I didn't know we were allowed.
Just go to the callers.
No, I can't. I got to go to a break. Nick's making the go to a break symbol. We're talking divorce, annulment, and remarriage, and lots of calls on the line, but we do have 2 lines open for you. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. Right back with more Rose Sweet on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live is proudly supported by CatholicChemistry.com, a new dating site for Catholics who want to do dating right and believe relationships start with Catholic chemistry. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicChemistry.com for their generous support on the web at CatholicChemistry.com.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Morning Glory. It's Catholic from coast to coast.
St. Paul says in the scriptures, knowledge puffs up. So I think maybe that's the connection between, unfortunately, a lot of modernity where we've discovered this intricate order to the stuff, and yet the rise of atheism among a lot of people. Remember when we were kids, we say, hey, I know a few things. My mom or dad would say, yeah, that's right, you know a few things, a very few things.
Morning Glory. Talking about everything important to today's Catholic. Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. There's certainly, without question, a crisis in marriage around the world. And also, I do think Catholics are, we're struggling with how best to defend marriage. And I know that there's statements that the Pope's made that have got people on edge and all that. And I don't understand that. It's fine to be on edge. But as you were saying, the basic teaching, we can know it. That marriage is permanent, that it's for the spouses and for the procreation and raising of children, that it's for the good of souls. It's not just for my momentary or fleeting satisfaction or happiness.
Right, and my spouse should come first. There's a strong and deep fidelity that the other person is my primary love relationship. Right, in an appropriate way. And I love today, I say I'm not a canon lawyer, and sometimes people make fun of me for that, but I don't have to be a canon lawyer to pick up the catechism and see what the church teaches, or to read scripture, or to go to Catholic.com. We're in such a wonderful age today. We can find out the truth of what Jesus said and what the church teaches on our own. Now, we need canon lawyers, and we need good, smart people when we're confused or need an expert. But the average person has all this at their fingertips today, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Marco in Italy, watching on Facebook Live. Marco, thank you for joining us. Your question for Rose Sweet.
Oh, hi. I hope you can hear me. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Well, my question would be, how does the church see the civil marriage? I still have difficulties to figure that out.
Okay. What's the Catholic teaching on civil marriage?
Hey, Marco. Well, the Catholic Church understands that we are part of a civil community and knows that civil marriage protects husband and wife and children and family in the civil arena, and the church sees that as good. However, the church doesn't recognize a civil marriage alone as being an authentic Christian marriage. So is that what you wanted to know, or what else?
Well, it makes me wonder, let's say, if someone is still in a civil marriage, can he get married in a church, or he has to get a divorce?
Okay.
A civil divorce.
Oh, that's a great question.
Okay, so it does get a little more complex. Okay, so if you're a validly baptized Christian, Catholic or not, and you enter marriage, the church presumes that that is a valid Christian sacramental marriage. If you're not baptized and you get married, that's also valid, but a natural marriage. There's no sacramental graces there. Okay, I know.
So, but it sounds like Marco, or someone that Marco knows, has been in a civil marriage, but not married in the church.
Okay.
So does he have to get a divorce?
No. Okay.
Okay.
If the person was married civilly and they're not Catholic, the church already recognizes that as a valid marriage.
Okay.
But if you're Catholic and you married outside the church and you only married civilly, the Catholic Church goes, "Come home, brother or sister. We don't recognize that."
So can you go to the priest and what do you do then?
Yes, you make sure that you're in the state of grace, that nobody has prior marriages, and you come and have your marriage convalidated, not blessed, because you can bless a dog or a cat or a rosary. This is much more than a blessing. The Catholic Church will help you take that civil marriage and actually give you a marriage sacrament, a sacramental marriage.
Does that help you, Marco?
Well, it's still a little bit confusing,
Well,
but
Marco,
I have to make a research.
No, let me ask you a question. So, are you married outside the church?
No, I grew up in a very strong Catholic family and never been married. I'm just wondering, if there's any recognition for a civil marriage, if the church sees any validity in a civil marriage or sees nothing.
Okay, that's it. If you are Catholic, you are expected to marry in the Catholic manner, and that means come on down to church and get married and receive the sacrament. If you went to the courthouse or you got married civilly, the church does not recognize that. If you're Catholic, it does not recognize that as a valid marriage.
Okay, I think
Okay.
I think that got it.
Okay.
All right, Marco, I'm just saying that because we got to keep moving, Marco, because right now every single line is full. Marco, thank you very much for that question. Let's go to Helen in New Jersey, listening on Domestic Church Media. Helen, your question for Rose Sweet.
Hi, Rose. I actually took a divorce course through our church with you in your book and the video. And
hi, Helen.
So I was really excited to hear your voice. I was like, wait, I know her. Anyway, I've been divorced for about 7 years. I initiated the divorce. Essentially, the quick and dirty is my ex-husband pretty much put the values of the children and their needs and wants before the marriage. And I was completely undermined and et cetera, disrespected, I mean, blah, blah, blah. So I ended the marriage. It was very bad. I ended it, and I moved away. And I know my ex wanted to, at some point get back together, but when I left, he found someone else and remarried. So we did not have the marriage annulled, but I'm just still suffering from a lot of anger. It was, I just can't seem to get past the anger, and this is, 7 or 8 years later, to forgiveness, and I've seen counselors, and I just can't seem to get to that point.
Helen, I hear the pain in your voice. Do you have a good spiritual director?
I do not. Where do I find a good spiritual director?
Well, that's we could talk for an hour about that. First of all, pray. Second of all, go to a wise and trusted priest friend that you know and ask him to recommend somebody who might be good for you. It sounds like you have a lot of layers that need talking out so that you can sort all your feelings together. It's impossible to just go, you should forgive and you should get over your anger. We can't do that in a second. With supernatural grace, we might be able to. But it sounds like you need some help, some counseling, and to just sort through drawing on your Catholic faith to get the big picture, because you probably have a right to be angry, but you don't have the right to hang on to it till it turns into bitterness. And I did that in the past, and that will only eat you up. So you can always email me after the show. If you saw me on the videos, you probably know my website. Get a hold of me, and I'll spend a little time with you.
Thanks, Helen. The website is complicated, though. We should probably say it. The address. Is it rosesweet.com?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It is.
That is complicated. Ken in Silverton, Oregon. Again, Helen, I apologize. Thank you very much for the call. Kent in Silverton, Oregon, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Kent, thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Rose Sweet.
Well, hi there. I'd like to make this as quick as I can. I'm divorced, had the marriage annulled, remarried probably too quick, married a non-Catholic, but I was married in the church. That marriage fell apart, and my question real quickly is, should a person, if you feel like you're never going to be married again, that you're pretty much, settled into single life, should you have that marriage annulled just to have it off the books, so to speak, or just let it lay, basically, with the church?
Well, Kent, first of all, every situation is different. And I would say in this second marriage, before you do anything else, make a good examination of conscience and make sure that you've done everything possible to make that second marriage work and to reconcile. And we don't need to go over the details, but that is an absolute first important step in, considering how to move forward in the future. If nobody needs an annulment after civil divorce. You are still married to your second spouse in the church. You're married. You may be living separate lives, but you're married in the eyes of the church. You can live a good and holy life as you are right now, offering up sufferings and trials for the salvation and the sake of your spouse. But if you want more closure or you want some questions answered, go learn about annulment. And also it may be that your former spouse or your spouse will someday seek an annulment on her own and then you'll be drawn into the situation anyway. So you may want to just learn more about it and be prepared so that when you make a decision whether to do it or not, you know what you're doing, not just somebody, oh yeah, Rose Sweet said I should do it. Just, I want you to understand the benefits of doing it or not. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Kent. Thanks very much. Rose Sweet is our guest. Her latest book is The Catholic Woman's Guide to Happiness, but there's a new one coming. When is that, in May?
It's number 2 in a series of 4, and it's The Catholic Woman's Guide to Romance, and yes, it's coming in May.
Can men read it?
Men have to read it. They should read it.
To know how to...
Real men, read my book.
Okay. Thanks very much. Well, that validates that I'm a real man then, having read one.
Missy told me that you were a real man.
She did? Mm-hmm. Shoo, finally. Yeah. Finally, she acknowledges the truth. Kevin in Jackson, Michigan, listening to EWTN Online. You are up next. Kevin, your question for Rose Sweet.
Hi, Rose. Thank you. I am divorced about 8 years now, and neither of us are involved with anybody. I'm still interested. Any tips on how to spark that second romance?
Oh, you would like to return to living fully as a married couple with the woman you are divorced from. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I got you. Okay.
Oh,
right.
That's kind of exciting.
Well, you're going to need Rose's book.
Yeah, you will. Okay, so here's the thing. Put your salesman hat on. If you want to sell yourself and the prospect of getting back together the way God intended, you want to make it look good and possible to your client, to your spouse, right? So what is it that she wants? Do you know what she wants? Do you know how she wants to live out the rest of her life, how she sees a marriage going? That would be a first point of discussion, is to approach her and say, if we got married again, what would have to happen? What are your must-haves and must-have-nots? And that would just be a good place to start to get to know her heart, because that's what all of us, all spouses, want to know, that our husband or wife is open to understanding the deepest part of us. Does that make sense?
Sure does. Yep.
So just ask her, like you're doing a market survey. What do you want, baby?
Okay, Kevin, thanks very much.
Let's pray for him.
We should, and it does happen. That I know some people who got divorced and they are remarried again. And
I love it.
Yeah, it's very good when it happens. Kevin, thanks very much. Rose Sweet is our guest. Our topic, marriage, annulment, divorce, all those realities. More right after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture's moral center continues to fly apart, and with every form of deviance publicly aired and celebrated, we have no choice but to equip our kids to understand about such issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level, to meet the world's challenges. Silence can no longer be an option. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging on to the shop at Catholic.com.
Wouldn't it be great to have a book to give to anyone to explain exactly why Catholics believe what we believe? The good news is that now there is. Why We're Catholic is the groundbreaking new resource by apologist Trent Horn. That one book you can hand to anyone as a starting point for helping them find their way into or back to the practice of the Catholic faith. Don't miss out on the most important, life-changing book to come along in years. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Rose Sweet, our guest. Rose's latest book, The Catholic Woman's Guide to Happiness. You can get it wherever you can get books. It's from Tan Books, right?
Yes.
It's part of your 4-book series. Lots of folks on the line. We have 3 lines open, however, so if you have a question about maybe your situation or someone that you'd like to be able to help, or a more general question about annulments, divorce, remarriage, all that, 888-318-7884, the number. Let's go to Chris in Denver, Colorado, listening on 1060 AM. Chris, your question for Rose Sweet.
Yeah, hi, Rose. I've been married for about 36 years, and my wife's been sick for about 3 of those last years, and the relationship has really gone south. A lot of verbal abuse and things said that, you wouldn't say in a normal marriage situation. So I'm actually going to file for divorce because I've kind of reached the end of my rope, if you will, on solutions to try to give her help because she doesn't accept any help. And I was just curious about the Eucharist part, and if this is a situation where our marriage would be eligible for annulment at some point.
Chris, only a legitimate tribunal, a competent tribunal can determine that. But let me tell you something. I want to tell you this story about a man who was married for over 40 years to a woman who had dementia, and she was so nasty to him. He couldn't be in the same room with her for 5 minutes. She was horrible, and he didn't know how to handle it. So he got a separate apartment, and he did not divorce her. He continued to support her financially and visit her. He tried daily, but sometimes it would last 2 minutes. But he tried to support her in any way that he could without being around her for so long, because for him it was absolutely unbearable. He was elderly, and she was horrible. I couldn't even be in the same room. And how did I know? Because it was my mom and my dad. So verbal abuse and this kind of thing is not grounds for annulment. It means it's grounds for prayer and begging God for grace. But there are legitimate options that you have if it becomes completely unbearable for you. And obviously we can't solve it today on the phone, but I would suggest getting some good spiritual direction, talk to a good family therapist on getting her some help. You're right, she may not want it or respond to it, but you can. You can find good options for yourself that don't require divorce. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I've been seeking out that path for a while, but nothing's really seeming to work. So that's why I'm conflicted about it. But
Chris, our Lord never abandons us, and that's the basis for the church teachings on marriage. A difficult marriage is never grounds for this kind of a divorce or annulment. But you may separate if necessary, but you need some good guidance on this. So if you want to email me after the show, I'm happy to help you if I can.
RoseSweet.com is our website where you can find the information for emailing her. I imagine towards the later stages of our lives, someone has a stroke, someone gets dementia, marriage can become very, very difficult, and you're not getting any younger. So you reasonably might, in some cases, say, this is not bearable. I can't stay in the same house. I'm still going to care for and love this person, but
right,
it's just too much.
The easy way out is get a divorce because it's clean and simple and you're free.
Oh, yeah.
But you can't do that. Violates the dignity of marriage and that person. You don't want to abandon her, but you also have to take care of yourself at the same time. There are ways around it that will keep your conscience clear.
Chris, thank you very, very much for the call. Again, 888-31-TRUTH is our number. We're talking with Rose Sweet about annulments, divorce, and remarriage. From a Catholic perspective, Richard in North Carolina, listening on Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Channel 130, EWTN. You are up next. Your question for Rose.
Good evening. Great show. My wife and I have been married probably 43 years, going on 44. And she has 3 or 4 times she's tried to get an annulment. She can't. So she's kind of given up on that. And as far as receiving the sacraments now, and our priest right now, but I've heard several different takes. I want to know your school of thought on as far as receiving the sacraments if you remain chaste. And we have probably for the last 4 or 5 years, and we're both good with that. We're up in our late 60s, early 70s, but she can't get an annulment. She won't. So we remain chaste, and you can still receive the sacraments, but I've heard people say you can't.
Okay. It's a delicate situation, but I think, first of all, congratulations to both of you for taking the high path and doing the right thing. To receive the sacraments is much more valuable to the soul than sexual activity. And obviously, you know, Richard, that you are being intimate in many other ways in your love for each other and refraining sexually. So you give great witness there. Some people who are very visible in the church and very active, and everybody knows their story, and that there's no annulment and you're living together, and they can presume that you're still having sex and they don't know, that can cause scandal in some situations depending on who you are and how involved in the church you are. In certain cases like that, you would want to get advice from your pastor or a good spiritual director. But most of the time, people don't know, and there's no cause for alarm. You just continue to do what you're doing and ask for God's grace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I've heard pretty much the same thing from a few different people, including our pastor. And he said what people really don't know doesn't concern them. And if they have no idea about your life, I mean, you're good.
Well, and again, it's not my opinion or even that other priest's opinion. It's what is the church teach? What does the church teach? And that's what I love about being Catholic. When we're confused or we hear different answers, we can always go right to the source.
And that goes back to what you said earlier, that there's basically 3 things we're protecting. The Christ in this represented in the sacrament, protecting the dignity of the sacrament,
right,
protecting your own soul, both
right,
of which you're already doing.
Right.
But the third thing is the community.
Exactly, safeguarding the sanctity of the community so that they're not led astray either.
And it does sound like that Richard is checking all of those boxes.
You're a good husband, Richard.
But we've heard, I know a few older priests, they just don't go along with it. They don't like the whole idea, period.
Ignore them.
It's just one of those things.
Pray for them.
Okay.
Pray for them. Pray for them.
I will. Okay. Thank you. Great show. Thank you for your information. Bye.
If you know the church's teaching, you're always free to follow the church's teaching, even if you find 10 priests who tell you not to.
Right, right.
Let's go to Sophia in Los Angeles, watching on Facebook Live. Sophia, thanks for joining us. Your question for Rose.
Hi. Yes. Well, it's more like an advice. I don't know what to do. Like I have a fiance. We've been together for about 6 years. We got engaged in 2015, and we were planning on getting married this year. And we had a day. We had the church. We talked to the priest. I bought my dress, and all of a sudden, his parents around last September, they started telling him to leave me, to not get married. So I'm Mexican and he's from Iraq. So it's like different cultures, I know. But, I mean, we've been together for about 6 years. I'm very Catholic. I was thinking they were very Catholic. We got married in the court only in 2016. So, I mean, but he lived in his house and I lived in my house. I told him, I wanted to wait to get married in the church. And we were planning it for this year, but out of nowhere, his parents, they just said, you guys can't be together anymore because you guys fight so much. But that's not even an excuse because we don't. I mean, we fight here and there, I guess like everybody else. We have differences. But, I mean, we still love each other. He doesn't want to leave me, and I don't want to leave him. So it's
So the problem is that the problem that you want advice from Rose on is his parents are advising him to not to marry you.
and to divorce me from the court.
And is he listening to that?
Well, he says he doesn't want to make them mad because they're kind of old, like they're in their 60s.
All right.
70s.
Well, I think Rose has got enough information there.
Okay, Sophia, I'm sorry. I know this is probably very frustrating. You're trying to take the right path and get married in the church the way God wants you to. But if he is choosing his parents over you, that's a form of infidelity to a spouse. The spouse, if he's not able to separate, as it says in Scripture, to leave your mother and father and cleave to your spouse, he's not ready for marriage as the church intends. He's got to make a choice, and you have to not make it easy for him. I think you should, out of love and justice and charity, be very clear and say, you have to leave your mother and father emotionally. And I understand it's hard for you because you love them. I get it. But I have to have yay or nay here. Because you got to do that. You got to take the high path yourself. It sounds like, though, if he's torn between two lovers in a certain sense. He can't leave mom and dad to be married to you.
Does that sound familiar and correct, Sophia?
Yes, it does. But I told him, like, I don't want to be in the middle of his parents and him. Like, we were all getting along together. Like, we've been together for like 6 years, so it's like very confusing to what happened. Like, I don't know what happened.
Right, but Sophia, I just want to bring it back to Rose's advice to you is just regarding your fiance. It's not about his parents.
Take them out of the triangle.
The question is he going to be married to you, or is he going to stay as their, still in his childhood relationship with them? He's got to pick. Do you feel comfortable letting him know he's got to pick?
Yeah, I told him, it says in the Bible, when you get married, you leave your parents and you go to your wife. But he says yes, and I understand, but at the same time, it's like, if something happens to them, they're going to blame him because they're very manipulative. Like, his culture is very manipulative. So they want him to do whatever they want him. Like,
Sophia,
they want.
Sophia, honey, you can explain this to him morning, noon, and night, and you can argue and argue. And you know what? You're not in the middle. The parents are in the middle.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to recognize at some point this man isn't capable of marriage as God intended. Get some good counsel from a wise and holy priest on this.
So some men, though, I say this from some experience, once you knock them up the head with the reality of you need to make adult decisions now, they will.
Right, but
they'll start doing it.
But you can't say make your decision and then just sit there and make it easy for them not to make the decision.
No.
Sophia might have to get up and leave.
Yeah.
So you might have to leave to shock him out of into his senses.
And Sophia, one thing you should know, we get calls all the time from Catholic men. There's no good Catholic women to marry. So I'll say, Sophia's free. If it comes to that, I'll be happy to let them know that you're free. Was that wrong? Did I say the wrong thing?
Well, she does have that civil marriage to deal with.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to know. There's.
Okay.
Yes.
And we shouldn't really be. I know we're laughing here, but so this is painful for Sophia, and I do understand that. We're going to pray for you.
But it's also true that Sophia points to a problem that lots of women are having now, which is men who won't grow up. And sometimes you need to just say to the man, you either need to grow up or this is not going to work.
Well, I do a lot of work for people who in the annulment process, and I can't tell you how often I hear that on the honeymoon, he talked to his mother for an hour every day on the honeymoon, or she talked to her father, or they brought their parents with them on the honeymoon, and they hung out all day. So this stuff is real. This stuff is real.
Yeah, it is indeed. All right, Sophia, thank you very, very much. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Join us on air today on Catholic Answers Live.
You know what Catholic radio is? It's training for the troops. It's a interaural of the ear boot camp. The folks who listen, who grow in their faith, grow in charity, grow in all the virtues, they then go out and exert an influence far beyond just themselves. Catholic radio has an exponential effect for bringing people deeper into the faith.
Dr. Ray Guarendi thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
St. Paul's street evangelization isn't like other evangelism you might have seen on the streets. We don't yell, and we don't force anyone to pay attention to us. Instead, St. Paul's street evangelization is committed to presenting a positive, passionately Catholic presence to a world hungry for truth. For more information, or to start a chapter of your own, go to www.streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com. It's time to do our part.
I've been saying this this week, and I just want to mention it again. We are now, as far as I know, there are now fewer than 10 spots left for couples to come with us to Rome, November 4th through 13th. Chris Check, our president, will be there. Our chaplain will be Father Hugh Barber, our chaplain here. My wife, Misty, and I will be your hosts, and we're going to check in at the really beautiful Hotel Colonna Palace on November 4th. It's just steps from the Pantheon. It's right there in Old Rome. You wake up every morning right in the heart of Rome, and each day we'll explore new aspects of the city of Rome and of Vatican City. We'd love it if you would join us, but seriously, there are fewer than 10 spots, to my knowledge. It may be fewer than that. I haven't got an update today. You just go to CatholicAnswersPilgrimage.com if you want to come. It's going to fill up soon, and we would be delighted to have you with us. CatholicAnswersPilgrimage.com. Our guest today is Rose Sweet, a expert on the pastoral care of those people who are married, those people who are divorced, those people who are married, divorced, and remarried, those who have annulments, those who don't have annulments. That's your, what would you say, bailiwick? Yes. That's your wheelhouse.
Yes. It's sad to say I got a lot of this wisdom the hard way by failing miserably myself. But
wisdom is worth the price, however.
I don't get paid to be here. Are you kidding me?
I don't mean that you're getting paid dollars. I mean, wisdom is worth the price that you have to pay in life to get wisdom.
You're right.
Wisdom is beautiful in all her raiments.
Yes, she is.
Catherine in North Carolina, listening on the EWTN app. You are up next. Your question for Rose Sweet.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for taking my call. So I am a cradle Catholic and a devout Catholic at that. And my fiance and I are going to be getting married in the Catholic Church this summer. My fiance was not raised Catholic. He was raised in a very strict Baptist household. When we got engaged, his family was very excited for us. And then over the course of the last week or so, his mother has expressed outrage, disgust, a lot of anger at the fact that we are proceeding to get married in the church, telling him that his grandparents are rolling over in their graves and this is immoral and he doesn't understand what he's doing. And I want to be clear, he's 39 and I'm 33, and we are well versed in what we're doing, and we're currently going through pre-Cana counseling. But anyway, I could really use some advice, we both could, as to how to deal with this particular situation. And for a little bit of background, his father is a Baptist minister, so I think that's probably adding a layer of difficulty here.
You think?
Catherine, yeah, God love you, honey. This is exactly why that we always recommend that we marry people within our same faith, because even though you love each other and you both love Jesus, these deep background issues can cause problems not just between the couple, but as you can see, the extended family. That being said, marriage is between you and him. And now you have a triangle like the previous caller, his parents and the family. He's the one who has to get those people out of the middle of your relationship. And that's probably going to be very painful for him and for you too, because I'm sure you love them. And you may not be able to convince them or change their mind in any way, shape, or form. It may even get ugly someday. But you guys have to come together and say, are we willing to do whatever it takes to move forward the way we know we have to move forward, and be respectful to mom and dad, but to get them out of the picture and out between the two of us. Otherwise, you're going to have this triangle. It doesn't take. Fulton Sheen wrote, "It takes three to get married," but the third person was Jesus. Right. It's not the mom and dad, exactly. Does that make sense, Catherine?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And my fiance has not only agreed to get married in the Catholic Church, but to raise our children Catholic. He comes to Mass with me. He's been very open because he does not feel connected to the Baptist faith. And I suspect that maybe that's really what his mother's issue is here. But, we're more than willing, both of us, to talk with her. And he's been very firm with her. But, it's obviously a very sad situation, and it's hurting both of our hearts because we don't want dissension in our family.
Well, one thing I would offer, and this is for any relationship problem, is sometimes the other people just want to be heard and understood. And maybe you want to sit down, maybe even together privately, and say, Mom and Dad, what are you afraid of? Because it's fear that's motivating this in them right now. They're afraid of something. Help them talk that out and be as understanding as you can, and maybe that will help to some degree. Maybe not, but it's helped me in a lot of relationships.
Catherine, thank you. Appreciate that call. Hope that was helpful to you. Let's go to Richard in San Paulo, California, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Richard, your question for Rose Sweet.
Hi, Rose. I'm looking to see, do you believe that there's a spiritual warfare component to marriage and divorce, what's going on in society today?
Oh, yes. I believe there's a spiritual warfare. That's all.
I'll help you, Rose.
It's our whole culture, Richard. You're right. We are under grave attack right now, and we need the graces of the sacraments more than ever. I mean, yes, marriages are under attack, every way, shape, and form.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think Richard just wanted to make sure you weren't missing that component.
No, this stuff is real, but we don't need to be in fear of it because God did not give us a spirit of fear, and we have the graces and the sacraments to overcome. So.
Yeah, but it does speak to the fact that don't try to do your marriage alone. That's what the sacraments are for.
Right.
Right. And
right. Good advice.
Carolyn, listening on Sacred Heart Radio in Cincinnati, Ohio. You are up next, Carolyn. Your question for Rose.
Hello. Let me give you a quick background. I was married civilly, and we did not get married in the church, unfortunately. I'm divorced now. My ex-husband was alcoholic and abusive, and after 22 years of marriage, I felt God saying that it's time to leave. I did get divorced. I know that I have to seek an annulment. I just wanted to give you some background. That's not my question. My question is, I've been dating for about a year, a very nice man. He is becoming Catholic. We are remaining chaste in our relationship. But I've come for the last year to realize that I don't think I have the physical attraction to him, the romantic that I feel that you should have for someone. And I feel bad about this because he's a great, wonderful person. He's becoming Catholic, and he's everything you'd want in somebody. But I just don't have I don't have that romantic physical attraction, and everyone's telling me because I'm in my 50s, well, it doesn't matter at your age anyway.
Well,
so
Rose?
I'm confused by this.
Yep, okay.
You're 50. You're not dead yet, for crying out the window.
Wait till you get to be 54. I'm just kidding.
No, you know what? Okay, this is, again, every case is different. If you're already ruing the fact that this isn't there and you desire it, this could turn into be a long-standing resentment in your marriage. So you have to be very honest with yourself about how important this is to you. We can't just be blanket, because to somebody else it might be okay, but it might not be for you. And when you were talking, I was thinking about, I know a nice guy, and he goes to church and he loves the Lord and everything, but that doesn't mean I marry him. It doesn't mean he's suitable for marriage. Marriage is intended for the good of the spouses, and you should have that love and that spark, at least to some degree. And again, this can get complex, but get some good counsel. Do you have somebody you can talk to, like a good Catholic therapist or a good spiritual director?
Yes, I do.
Examine your motives, Carolyn. Examine your motives for marriage. Is it for loneliness? Is it financial reasons? Is it for sex? What is it? And you don't need to say that to me now, but be brutally honest with yourself, because you've been given another chance to do this right. And it's far better to be lonely and alone than be in a miserable, miserable, miserable marriage.
Carolyn, thanks very much. I'm going to move because I think we can get another caller in here. Julie in Kansas City, listening on 91.9 FM. Your question, I'm sorry, but very quickly for Rose. Julie? Hang on, Julie. I pushed the wrong button. Go ahead, Julie.
Hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
My question, okay. My question is really, at what point as a spouse do I have the right to give up when my husband is suffering extreme mental health issues? He's a veteran. He's severe PTSD, verbally, emotionally abusive. We seek counseling both through the Catholic Church, private, he's actually at a rehabilitation center right now for 6 months.
Okay, Rose. Yep, we get the picture. Thank you. I'm very sorry to hear it, but Rose, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Julie. Well, this is where you need to just slow down and don't make any rash decisions. I know the emotions are running really high right now because this is very difficult. It can just wear you down to nothing. But take a deep breath, get some good counsel, and recognize there are ways to live together or separated and still preserve the marriage bond, or if you have to take care of your safety right away, that's the first thing. If you have actual safety issues, or take care of that. But then secondly, you can look at your marriage. Is this something that came into the marriage later that is not grounds for nullity, or was there something very bad or an impediment at the very beginning? I'm not advocating divorce or annulment, but research it first.
Julie, thanks very much for that question. Thanks everybody else who called today, and a particular thank you to you, Rose Sweet.
Thanks. So many hurting people. We all want to be loved, and we're trying to do the best we can. But the Catholic Church is here to help.
Amen. And as my grandfather used to say, this world is not our home.
No, it is not.
We all that happiness and love, we will get there.
And some of us are a lot closer to it than others.
To the grave, is that what you're saying, Rose? I've been losing weight, Rose. I'm doing better.
Yeah, but your hair is still gray.
You can find out all about Rose at rosesweet.com, or maybe find her book, The Catholic Woman's Guide to Happiness. 2 hours of open forum tomorrow. Any question at all from anybody at all about the Catholic faith is welcome. We'll see you then, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.